friends, welcome to or welcome back to my channel. This is Megan and today we're going over all of the books that I read in April. So this won't be actually all of them. I believe I read 28-ish, but these are the ones that I physically own, so I'm not going to be going over the digital copies. But I just wanted to do a quick overview of the physical books I own. So first of all, I read this duology of Sea Witch and Sea Witch Rising by Sarah Henning. This is kind of a backstory to Ursula, if you will. And it shows Ursula as a human and being betrayed by humans and being kind of seen as lesser than because of her magic. And it was actually super interesting. It parallels with the Little Mermaid story really well. And then Sea Witch Rising is following more of that typical Little Mermaid story, except it's following one of Ariel's, if it were Ariel, I think her name is different in the book, but if it was Ariel's sister, so one of the sisters coming to land and trying to save Ariel from herself. So those were interesting takes on the Little Mermaid, and they were fun. Next I read other retellings, and that was The Shadow Queen, The Wish Granter, I don't have it here, but The Traitor Prince, we'll discuss that one, and then The Blood Spell. The Shadow Queen is a retelling of The Evil Queen. The Wish Granter is a retelling of Rumpelstiltskin. The Traitor Prince is The Prince and the Pauper, and The Blood Spell is Cinderella. I would say The Shadow Queen and The Blood Spell were my two favorites. The Shadow Queen, I think, was my absolute favorite of all of them. It was basically if you took Once Upon a Time, the TV show, and Dungeons and Dragons and meshed them together. Really enjoyed that. I also read So Many Beginnings. This was, I guess, the month of retellings because this is also a retelling. It's a retelling of Little Women following a black family during the decade of the Civil War. So that was super interesting to follow, and they all have different, similar but different names. So we have, instead of Amy, it's Amethyst, but they still went by their names, so Amethyst went by Amy, if that makes sense. Then we had Zara, which is an Asian sort of fantasy, and it also gives heavy Sailor Moon vibes if you like Sailor Moon. Specifically, there's also a cat companion following our main character, so that's why it was like giving very much Sailor Moon vibes. The cat was sort of like a guardian of sorts, and she is a magician in a world where magicians are kind of forbidden, and she is practicing her magic in secret and also trying to care for her blind sister and dealing with the evil mother. It somewhat feels Cinderella retelling-ish, but not entirely. And she joins this league called the Guardians of Dawn. I also read A Fragile Enchantment. This one is interesting in that we have a dressmaker and she can weave enchantments into the garments she creates. She's a like tailor dressmaker sort of concept, and she is hired by the Prince Regent, I think I'm saying that correctly, to be the tailor for the Prince Heir. I don't know what the technical terms are, but the prince that's actually ruling hires her to be the tailor for like the next in line prince, and he is known as kind of this rogue and kind of rude to people, honestly, and it was somewhat giving Pride and Prejudice vibes, I will say, and I really enjoyed it. But I also feel like the romance was not really that believable. It felt very surface level. I didn't understand why they were suddenly in love with each other, so just keep that in mind if you're going to read it. I read Garden of the Curse, and honestly, going into this one, I didn't have high hopes. I don't really enjoy urban fantasy. However, this one really took me by surprise. I enjoyed it a lot, way more than I thought I would, to be honest. So that was fun. We are following this girl who is a curse breaker, and she teams up with the prince who is undercover to break his curse. He feels like he's going to be cursed because he is the one next in line for the throne, so he feels like this overlooming threat of like he might be assassinated or cursed or anything of that nature, so he hires her to basically be his bodyguard and stand by in case he gets cursed to bring him back to life. So that was super interesting in that regard. I read Aquacorn Cove, which is a super cute graphic novel in the style of the Tea Dragon Society. It's by the same author. I love this style. It's just so cutesy. I love like the characters and the representation in these books. But this one specifically is following kind of like coral reef destruction and taking care of the environment you live in and the importance of nature and the world and everything. So I love the cutesy design relaying a really important message to us. I read Something Wilder by Christina Lauren. I usually really love Christina Lauren books, and not to say I didn't like this one, but I wouldn't say I loved it. I just think it's like kind of out of my realm of enjoyment. So it's more following like that Western cowboy-ish kind of vibe. They're not actually cowboys, but they are going on this hike to locate the bounty that, who is it? Butch Cassidy supposedly hid his treasure, and our main character's dad has passed away, but they think that her dad found the treasure and re-hid it for her, so they're on a treasure hunt is kind of the premise of this book. So it was fun, but kind of out of my realm of interest, so it wasn't my favorite of their books, but it was really enjoyable. Then I read When He Was Wicked, which is the 6th book of the Bridgerton series following Francesca, and I really enjoyed this one. I was loving it all the way through, but the very last line, literal knife to the heart. I was sobbing after reading it. It made me love the book even more, but I was really enjoying this one a lot, so that was a lot of fun to read. So I read Catch Me If You Can, which is following the true story of Frank Abagnale. If you haven't heard of him, he was like a really good con artist and was on the run. He was only like 16 or 17, I think, doing all of these things. He was creating his own checks. He was pretending to be a pilot, a doctor, a lawyer, so many different things. And the movie is also really good. It stars Leonardo DiCaprio and Tom Hanks. So highly recommend watching it if you get the chance. But I think this was my favorite book of the month. It was so fascinating to follow his story. I reread A Court of Frost and Starlight, as well as The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. And for our Bible study, we read God's Big Picture, and this is kind of tracing the overlying message throughout the Bible. So there's like episodic kind of instances throughout the Bible, but they are one big storyline. Kind of if you watch like Friends or New Girl or something like that, you can watch the episode by itself. The Office is a good example of this as well. But there is like this overarching story, so this kind of breaks down what that overlying story is. And then finally, I did DNF 3 books. So I read In the Lives of Puppets, Shadow of the Fox, and Starling House, but did not finish them. So those were my books of April, not including my digital reads, but I think I did a pretty good job in April. So that is all I have for today. Let me know down below what you guys read in April, and I'll check you in my next video. Bye, friends.